Hello everybody. The title of today's episode is Working with Transitioning Personalities. To begin with, when you look at the human experience, if you were to go in a park and to just look at people, you begin to see that how a being is oriented is based on their external projections, so their body, their physical body, and also how much their body can move, and also how much they are perceiving a world around them. When these factors come into place, you begin to see that the person is getting its personality based on how it's navigating or being alive in a moment where it's considering a world which is then giving it that solidity for the definition to be there. What that means is the minute I go to the grocery store and I put all my groceries and I'm just about to pay, I am a customer. Do you see? That experience in that moment is me paying as a customer. So it's as if the personalities and everything I am associating with is just looking at the task, and you will begin to see there's a fascinating thing. Our personalities are not fixed, because throughout the day there are moments where you're not even aware you're doing something, and you're doing, it's there in a sense. There are certain moments throughout the day, get rid of that part. There's certain moments throughout the day where you begin to see that an idea is not always in view, but a viewer is. Your awareness is using shape as much as you want a linear reasoning, a linear understanding. If you do not be so obsessed to want a linear understanding, which is the satisfaction for a certain sense of individuation, which is a certain sense of associations to which are creating personality, which are giving the person a definition, you kind of see it's as if ideas are like a stream. And at certain points, we're paying attention to the stream, and in that, we find different associations. Sometimes how you, as this existential life intelligence, move in this world transitions you beyond a sense of orientation that was limited to a sense of personality construct. So what that means is that, what is that change from your personality since you were 5 to now, which you are, let's say, 23? So you begin to see there's been so many changes through that, and some changes you weren't aware of. You've been thinking you've been the same person since day one, but there's been so many changes happening that if you become more existentially sensitive, that state of consciousness does not use idea, but is observing ideas. And so you see, it's not something where an individual needs an individual remedy. It's just that the individual needs to be aware of what is individual awareness, and in its depths of realizing what his awareness is, we'll begin to see existentially that he's more than his definition, because he's the reception of a novel moment. There's a new sense of awareness always, a new sense of interpretation. And of course, when I say this, it's based on the shape, so the individual. So you are somebody. You are also some body. You're a physical body. And as you're present here in the world around you, you're looking at what you see. And based on how you're aware and how you're concentrating at something, it is suggesting how much you want to extract it linearly, which leads to confusion, or trust the flow as it is and see that there is no need to extraction. Learning never needed to be an exchange. Because the exchanges are based on one sense of you interpreting. Other aspects of you learning is, in a sense, that self-awareness evolving to a point where it is aware what is limiting it and is no longer it. You may think that for a certain profession, this life might not have prepared you enough. But if you become aware of, for experientially, life has prepared you very well. You've lived for the amount of years you have, and it's not that you're empty. There's an awareness. You have ideas based on experiences. You have senses of self based on doing things. To your son, you are a father. To your father, you're a son. To reality, you're an individual, suddenly you are reality for an individual. Do you see your consciousness begins to shift and change in the sense that you begin to become aware that because the storyteller is the originator of the character and the setting it's in, once the character looks around, it begins to see everything is remembrance. Everything is awareness. There is an absolute sense of experience in which once we become aware of it, we have no words for it. And the closer you get to the state, you become a bit poetic. Daydreaming is actually when the being decides to engage more internally in expression than externally. And the external and internal, these are separative. In other words, I'm talking about these because there's an individual consciousness. Collective consciousness doesn't need words. It's a silent reintroduction to your greater self in the sense that you are always growing to what you must be. What that means is, if you didn't know anything and you walked outside into the world you know and you saw a flower or a tree, you would be impressed by the profundity of that intelligence with certain specifications growing to a certain point and just being there. And you may begin to try to deconstruct it and begin to see how it is, and based on our current, most neuroscientists, why it's like that. What you begin to see, when there is a new thing, when there's a new moment of interpretation, no man is greater than the newest and clearest vision. So this is in a sense also what is found in the profundity of having a new technology come. A new technology, what did Steve Jobs do? He gave us iPhones. What did iPhones do? They made more the human individual communicate more to its other senses of beings. For example, to other human beings, right? So it's as if like the drops, the technology made the drops understand more of an ocean-like experience. And so this is what we see has happened with globalization. But there is something more in the sense that when you begin to observe the depth of why existence has to be here, you become aware that there is no idea looking for truth here. That your truth can potentially be beyond language, so it's an experiential one. It is where something about your experience of your moment is shifting. Whether it's suddenly you walking and observing 4 birds simultaneously flying towards you and you wondering when they're going to ascend so they don't hit your face, or you find yourself in any errand being aware to the moment as the moment rather than an object in the moment. Objective understanding is connected to a sense of awareness of collective being. You cannot do an individual action without a collective knowing. So this is where you must ask yourself, was trust something that needed imagery, or was it something that was beyond image? And so why is it that when that salesman salesman knocks on your door in the afternoon and you begin to hear his pitch, why isn't it that you're not trusting it? Because there is not a satisfaction of the most, how do I say it? You are aware that whether you are interpreting it or the external world is suggesting that you are interpreting it, novelty could never be man's creation. A part of us wants to burst into new renaissances and new senses of communication as the human experience, and a part of us wants to preserve the experiences that are keeping reality valid now. The choice must come to the individual. For the individual, that attention to how you are somebody and something and just alive and self-aware is one of the most profoundest things that's happening in the universe right now. Because when you look around, you see man is at the peak of self-awareness and there's no sign of anything else until you begin reading ancient texts and you see that the human experience has always been multidimensional, because reality cannot be made certain by an individual part of it. So what that means is perhaps the concept of God has stood around in a profound way because it is suggesting where consciousness is going. For a scientist, the consciousness is going into an unending problem which will never be solved because it is based on the limitations of one plane of existence. But as a multidimensional being, you're an experience of simultaneous planes, and that is why there's creativity and not just a world where the programs do not have self-awareness. On some level, we should know that when we are exploring infinity, that when one puts two mirrors in front of one another and puts an object between them, regardless of how much they feel as an object they're infinite, they're still between two mirrors. And so a lot of confusion begins when a being who is multidimensional in its two conceptions of reality, which are kept beyond time and space, is finding them to meet. So what that means is it's not just that human communication has increased, it's just that the communication of the whole plane of existence has increased. So what that means is the subtler realms, the subtler dimensions are all joining into one. And that is why we are finding manifestation to occur a bit faster, not because it's happening faster in this plane, just because in your experience it is. When you take an existential responsibility as consciousness, time and space no longer become your comfortable assumption. An assumption kept arrogantly comfortable because the novelty of the moment is one where it needs nothing. When you see that there's a way for the human being to live where it is with complete trust in its life force and its movement, it's as if the growth and the beauty of you as a being is internally aware of the source. There is an aspect of human experience which is your own manner of looking at your life again and seeing that it was beyond ideology and the box of space and time as we are so arrogantly assuming it's fixed. Maybe for an object we may consider the experience of space and time, but for the intelligence of the observer of the object of experience, there is nothing aside from the acceleration of this reality until you let go of it and you see it was never about the object between the two mirrors. It was about the intelligence that put the object there and is in a sense still holding it in its hand. So what that means is man will lose hope in man. Some men have done that, It has fluctuated. Where mankind was feeling comfortable about its expression as a species. So the human individual, certain individuals, they understand compassion to a degree where they're no longer thinking just for themselves, they're thinking for the species. Do you see? They're thinking for the human being. They're thinking for life, not the ideas of life that make justifications and lead to cutting down trees more than they need to be cut. Because it is not about an activism against a force that is not self-aware. It is about how much you realize that regardless of the apocalypse suggested by your generation and the imagery of your culture, you are beyond what you observe. You see that there are sages who are not sages yet, and they will begin saying a lot about certain wisdom. You see that some people, some teachers, they are not being sincere, but they are they feel like they should do something for the good of others. You know, sometimes we have people doing good things that they don't do it sincerely, and so it's as if it is not aligned with their intention. And what that could mean is that consciousness is aware that it can be alive, and also that life can transition into a different view, which some people are calling death. Simply said, look at the self-awareness of this human being. If you never moved from the room you in, you would never see what's outside. And it is because our existential intelligence is so dynamic that we have considered a projection of being in a world that's like this. What that means is, at first I thought that the dimensions were something, in other words, when the concept of dimensions became real for me, in other words, when I'm saying dimensions, in other words, multidimensionality. When the human being first looks at it, it's like, oh, multidimensionality, oh, so another dimension, you know, so that's how I was thinking at first, and it became a bit meaningless to me. Because I was like, what is the point of hopping around from one box of considered space of time to another? But then I realized that what if the human being got it wrong? Because as a life form, it considered its form too early. I mean, we had to for communication reasons and the development of culture and technology as it is now today, and there's nothing wrong with that. But now the human being can become aware. The human being can begin to see that the stage of life needs more than an actor. Because if you're not aware of, in a sense, the actor, and aware of that person who was never an actor but was acting in that way, sometimes truth is meaningless. Sometimes your truth is everything aside from what you are considering to not be truth. Another thing, guys, I want to add, I am right now talking about these concepts in a certain way based on who I am. But you must take from my talks the idea structures and begin to see how reality is real for you. Because there's a huge emphasis here in the sense that when we talk about higher consciousness, how can we talk about it? And you can't, but you can talk about the space of exploration where it can be found. And so Mr. Within is communicating that multidimensionality is not something to linearize and to have full certainty. It's an unknown sky. However, the pilot of consciousness is going with the clarity of what is real for it as a moment of experience. And this means that at a certain point you're going to go through a lot of thought processes, but as you do, some point through thinking about something deep, you'll be like, who's thinking? And then a silence will occur where you begin to see that you are not just existentially sensitive, but your vision as a human being is just like the focus of a camera lens, where if you're not mindful, it's changing. Do you see? But it's very important to know that when there is talk about symbols such as God and unified field theory, that it is not something to understand, but to have faith in the sense that it is an instruction not for the body maintenance of man, but for man's opening to his collective being. So the fruits in meditation are perhaps the existential mirror that one finds, that is the emptiness of their moment. And it does not mean it's empty as if there's nothing here. It's as if there is no interpreter, there's no thought. The thinker has gone home because it was always home. You must look at the structure of thought, and as you're looking at it based on me saying it right now, you are having your own view of it. So similar to how you are having a view on the structure of thought, you can see that the nature of your mind is an advanced communicator and interpreter. What that means is you are very smart as a being. And the reason you're questioning truth is because a part of you knows that it's here. And you must see, it's very important that it doesn't matter really what is being said, because my words are just movement of form in which an interpretation is being extracted by you. In a sense, of course. But simultaneously, you need to be aware that because man, the advanced communicator, the pilot of consciousness, is moving to a reality where he's acknowledging more simultaneous aspects of his own presence, where it's as if like you're done with an idea trying to figure it out, and you've just observed your moment of being to a point in which you're in awareness where the thoughts that are coming to you are not ones which you are going to first. So silence and stillness doesn't mean think about being silent, think about being still. It really means doing nothing. And it's that moment in the human being's life where he's trying to understand what nothing really means. Any being who begins to in-depthly look at what nothing means is becoming self-aware to how they are, in a sense, thought is in association with them. Let us say that you are not thinking, but you are aware of thought. And this awareness is of a transcendental hue. It has a transcendental glow in which an aspect of this glow is unknown. So we are working with the sacredness and the life of our moment. What that means is when you go talk to another human being, you're not going there to talk for your sake. You don't go talk to your friend because, you're like, I need someone to listen to me or something, No, you're going there to become more aware of the world around you through the world being received by the person you're communicating to. You become gracious when you see it wasn't so serious because the temporal was being observed. And so when omniscience is in a sense known by you, there is nothing to know through. It's as if the existential intelligence and the consciousness of the being has moved beyond acknowledging what it has. So what that means is you will begin to see that if you're sitting in your house and someone comes in, some random person, it's like, whose house is this? And you're like, oh, it's my house, You will begin to see, that that's your house. But if a guy comes in and says, hey, whose is that house on that side of the thing where you don't know whose it is, you will see, I don't know. And then you will become excited into that area of unknown. Do you see? We are not satisfied by temporal knowledge, it seems. And because we're not satisfied by temporal knowledge, it is the observance of the being to see what is here, which is signifying the quality of his experience. Personalities, guys, become significant here because once you realize that as your state of consciousness changes, your view of the whole world is different, your whole view of your whole existential intelligence is different, you will begin to see the personality doesn't have to be the same way it is. It's the same way it is. It's as if people go through certain moments of understanding where their lack of contribution is, in their experience, the movement of everything else. When you are still, dynamism, in a sense, becomes more clear to you. When you're moving, static stuff becomes a bit more clear to you. You know, these are certain things Mr. Within has noticed, and also this has been said. You know, and of course, a very, very wise friend of mine told this, and it just blew my mind. You know, so it's very important to notice, guys, that you need to decide what it is you want to do with a moment of experience rather than what you want to do for a body that's in that moment of experience. You want to work with the intelligence that is always here. Because if you want to work with an intelligence that's not always here, what that means is that if your truth is based on sciences, but sciences can only happen at a certain moment of your day when your mind's focused in a certain way where you're aware of those thoughts, you begin to see it's a truth, of course, but not a truth that is always with you. But when you begin to see the mystic's eyes, it is not that the mystic is finding science wrong. The mystic was the being who knew something about his being which was beyond objective perception. And so when you move beyond objective perception, of course it's beyond it, so you can't explain. And we are seeing that it's as if man's language has created a sense of multidimensionality in itself, to a point where the word paradox seems to be a prophet. Your peace is found when you're no longer trying to collect the pieces of something that is broken, where you just acknowledge reality as it is. What that means is that if you are not feeling something, you do not act. Because the consciousness does not have to be individual. What that means is this talk does not have to be because one person wants to talk to someone else, or one person wants to talk to an audience. This talk is simply the manifestation of naturally what is present in the moment. The minute if I begin individualizing in the sense that there's a speaker, the moment is limited. And so a selfless speaker is one where he's never speaking. I hope this talk has served you. To be honest, simply put, personalities are not fixed. As the individual consciousness becomes more collectively aware and begins to see the integration within the love of this world, how this world is held, you kind of see that personalities were a choice because there was a world chosen. When you explore reality as your world, your consciousness is boundless. But it is observant also of the bounds of many things. What that means is you might be walking one day normally and suddenly you just get this gentle feeling to sit down, and you sit down intuitively and you just close your eyes. Wherever you are, you just sit down on a bench and you close your eyes and you begin to see for a second, you transition out of someone doing an errand throughout the day and you just become a moment where as you are observing, suddenly it's like every sound, every idea, concept is just in your stillness kept. So by suddenly sitting down, you begin to see in one moment all personalities fade and you are the knowledge in your awareness. What that means is for a long time I thought the objects that I saw, like for example, I thought I saw, let's say, an apple on a tree, do you know? And let's say if I saw an apple on a tree, I would think that it does not have the vision that I do. Do you see? That was my reality. But then it changed to me seeing that the vision I have is not from the eye, but the awareness to the eye. And this awareness is just in an unknown landscape. You can right now say some things, make a unique sentence, say some words that no one has ever heard before. And so as we see the intelligence of novelty at work, collective consciousness was how man was non-linearly present. Because who would be so kind in this world to hold a person's projection? And do you know who? It is you. You are so kind to yourself as a multidimensional being in which an individual aspect of you is giving freedom to the point where it can question the plane of existence. And the minute it does, the questions are of the clouds, in a sense, poetically speaking. What that means is they're coming from the wisdom of the limitless sky. You are not bounded by the forms you see, for you are that which moves them. Freedom, you give it a shape, you will make billions of heavens for yourself. But if you make freedom as something that was always there, what that means is you're not free because of the things you've done and the hard work you've put in something. You are free because you exist that way. That is a different kind of freedom than the freedom in which we're actively trying to force, but we know it's an idea, but on some level we need to right now, in a sense, communicate a bit louder in our environment also, simply because certain things need to transition. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that throughout the day, guys, observe your sense of freedom and observe this beyond personality as just an intelligent being, just as an existential being, and begin to see how you want to align your consciousness. Now, if you have too many preferences, the quality of experience will be duller than if you just go with the profundity that is your moment waiting for you. So, we are seeing the beauty in someone's artwork, for example, in a museum, but we're not seeing individually the beauty in how we have many segmentations of space and time in a memory that can experience them all now. Within us, there is something beyond us. And so self-discovery was the task of a self-aware being. Before you even get your human ideology, you as an existential being need to discover this life and to acknowledge your moment without too many assumptions to dull it down for a sense of identity again. Let your moments be. Do you go and, let us say when you see an animal, do you go and hold the animal in a certain way to have it to be in a certain way? Do you limit that animal to its reality, or do you let the animal to be present in its environment and to move as it does? Do you see? So similarly, with your existential and devotional compassion to what life is, you must immediately just catalyze yourself from symbols and just go into greater existential observations of this world. You, as the self-awareness as you are a transcendental treasure revealer. And so I am just waiting to see very comfortably the amazing renaissances that are going to happen when self-aware minds that they realize they were never limited to their bodies. What that means is you people change because the way you're looking at them has changed. Your state of consciousness has changed. If you were only aware of your room, you have now become aware of the whole house. And so freedom of being was always a task beyond man. Because man could not see his freedom. It did not mean that he was not free. Trust your breath. Because after you're done reading every book known to man, you will see that's the most exciting thing. And as you become aware of it, every knowledge you have obtained will become present in a way where you are not, as an individually conscious being, aligning it, but your moment is collectively the essence of our transition. So know your eternity not based on the objects and images in your moment of being, but as the clear awareness to your moment of being. And that means don't think I'm right now giving a task where you're going to have a result. For emptiness is every man's way of remembering the liberated eyes of man. Liberation is not here to suggest that you need to do something to become liberated. Liberation is here to tell you, buddy, just like you know you got something to do, you got to pay attention to it and you got to try to perceive this life better. We need the youth of today to put an immense effort to perceive and to be in more efficient worlds. What that means is if I want to live based on how we're living right now, I mean, I'm acknowledging the present moment, but I want to live in a world where every individual in the world is aware as the world. For then, the eyes of the universe will open anew. The eyes of the cosmos will open anew. And it is all in your consciousness, which has a your branch, but its roots are deep and they're hidden. And so guys, it's very important for the West to acknowledge this. Based on certain movements of thought, the Western human experience does not trust everything in its experience. And so it has found a huge obsession to just taking the body, which is the awareness in its moment, and as that body suggesting what the world could be. Do you know? What that means is it's good to know the sciences and to be aware of the progression of technology always. It's like an existential responsibility. Be aware of what technologies are happening around you, you know. But on some level, you will see that there is no need to try to see the design of how each brick was placed when the path was made to walk. If science is allowing you to get a greater experience in this life, which is fulfilling you in the sense that more of reality is being explored, your knowing is constantly being realigned by your sense of exploring the unknown, you begin to see you're not here to play with stories. You are here to look through them at what is here. And that is absolute awareness. And this awareness is coming from a sense of oneness where you, based on how you are seeing yourself individual, suddenly begin seeing this individuality within everybody, and you're like, dear God, everybody could be suffering as much as me. And who am I to judge them before having met them? Of course, guys, the answer is playfulness. And what that means is that never limit your existential allowance to do things here. That's why you exist. Never think that that idea you have in your mind does not need to be spoken, because sometimes the reason it's in your mind is there to be said sometimes, you know. But sometimes it's there to be observed, in which the idea is taking you within so that you are cognizing to a point where you're questioning the last remaining duality that is suggesting this world is a world. And as you bask in that moment of observing all thought as if all conception was a cloth, you just take this cloth from the table and just push it up as if you are not convinced by how reality is placed in front of you at the dinner table, and you just take this cloth. And you begin to see some people take this cloth and they get rid of all the stuff that's already there. So, and sometimes the getting rid of this cloth could be the transition to death, but it could be the conscious awareness that you are beyond objectivity. So it's as if it is kind of a death, but at the same time you're aware that how you're alive in a more profound way. But the intelligence of transitions is unspeakable and undefinable, and that is why man is always able in the world of his creation, as a creative experience, as a creator experience. Respect the world around you, guys, and this respect is not the one where you're showing the same respect to your boss or to someone who you don't know or whatever. You know, this sense of respect is you getting a clear look at what is existing here, and then working with those real values. Do you know? What that means is sometimes in social situations, when I was younger, I would find myself in a situation where I would be in an environment and I would talk to some people, and I was a very arrogant kid at that time. And right after, I would just begin talking about what was there, do you know? Not gossip, but just talk, do you know? And I noticed that when we think we know, we don't know. When we don't think, all seems to be known. Many words can be said, but the sage is that person who, it's as if let's say this would be the hierarchy of, let's say, more conscious knowing, where the person who's not comfortable with reality wants to change it immediately. So he goes and pulls that cloth on the dinner table and everything it falls, let's say. And so he doesn't understand what's happening, and so he doesn't even pursue a self-awareness in the future. Some people try it and they see some things remain, some things fell, so they keep trying. They're constantly in it. Now, the sage begins to see that, okay, how can I move this cloth without moving what's there? Right? And there's really two ways you do it. You either engage in the reality, and so you go on this journey as to seeing what you are more than an idea, which many people are now, or you begin to see that you, without having moved it, the stuff is still there. So simply you in your knowing can know that regardless of the limitation, the limitless potential is there. That without that cloth being there, it's there. And so the sage sees that he can pull it in an instant and have none of it move, but without touching it, it is preserved. And this respect, I was saying, comes from your observance of life and its untouchable aspects. Of course you're not supposed to go, kill that animal. It's living, man. It's just doing its thing. It's not, you don't have enough conscious knowing and intelligence to know exactly why that animal is here, and so you can't make a judgment of taking its life. Respect the unknown, and the unknown will respect you. But respect your ideas and your judgments and your postulates within this vast infinite world, and you will be the arrogant limitation which the world around you would be like, this guy's not being real. You know, it's as if the world around you is like, this guy's not being real. And so you need to get out of your own projections by seeing that you don't really need to talk much in self-discovery. You need to, in the grace of silence, and the construction noises in the back. In the grace of silence and stillness, perceive your actuality. That is all that a being needs to do to become more intuitively and collectively aware. Listen to life. Be aware of the ideas that come to you. Be aware of the conversations that come to you. Be aware of your moment as your moment, in the sense that that's when you see beauty. Beauty is when life sees itself in grander ways, and the reason it's seeing itself in grander ways because it is knowing of that existence. So, the spectrum is kept by both polarities, but beyond the spectrum, the experience was as it was. And this is why you begin to see a spiritual person does not need too many words. And when he begins putting his trust in terminology rather than his direct experience, ideology will seem like it's saying something, but then we're not really hearing it because it's as if we're not in the right room. We're not existentially aware to what we are. And this is the idea, guys. Because how could existence not exist? How could existence not be aware that it exists? For as I may poetically say now, the Father of the cosmos and the Heavenly Father, every moment of manifestation was its Son. What that means is that, like, there's a sense of collective intelligence that is shapeless, and it's an intuitive knowing. So it's just like your trust in your walk is showing you all that is moving beside you. Do you know? And of course, the sincerity to observe life as life is the greatest gift. Personality is not essential when you're observing it. It is only essential when you're not. You are angry when you are not observant and mindful of yourself. Because the only way you can calm down after anger is to be aware, gosh, I didn't need to be this angry. Gosh, I didn't need to, say those things. Be mindful of your moment, and personality will not be dictated by the external story and the character you think you're in, but the storyteller's intelligence, which is more of a dynamic, it's as if it's a flow of consciousness, will be your ability to existentially confront simultaneous realities with the trust of your world, with the trust of your greatest symbol of what all this means. You know, and that is why I speak. Much blessings, and namaste. Much blessings and namaste.